Konami Studios. How is it going, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going down another casting hole, and I know I said I didn't want to do these a lot anymore, but here I am again doing another one because that's the kind of person I am. I say one thing and I do the other. And we are talking about John Krasinski today. I know it's kind of a weird one, but I thought we should talk about this because he has been in fan cast for a certain character at Marvel for so long. When I mean long, I mean probably since the announcement that Marvel bought Fox, this guy's been in consideration. And finally, we got confirmation that he actually met with Marvel for a role or something of the sort. Maybe it's a director thing, maybe it's a writing thing. But it's probably a job as an actor because he seems like the guy that they would go after because he's got a name behind him and people are going to see a movie just because he's in it. And I'll say right now, I know there's a lot of talk that he's going to be Reed Richards. I really hope he's not. I have made a video talking about how I don't want him or Emily Blunt to be Reed and Sue, and how I think it should be Matthew Rhys and Kerry Russell from The Americans. I've made a video about that. I don't want him to be Reed Richards, but likeliness is he will get that job. So I wanted to take some time and give you some alternative casting choices that I just came up with randomly. These are 10 characters he could play. I put them in order of least likely to most likely he would play given the chance, and that's just how we're going to go with these things. So again, these are nothing official. They are just a couple of roles I think he could play aside from Reed Richards, and these are roles I'd rather see him play than Reed Richards. And I could go down it again. If you guys want me to say why shouldn't he be Reed Richards, I'll do another video about it, but I don't want him in that role. I want someone that's a little more intense, could easily not be, you shouldn't like Reed Richards. I know that's a weird thing to say, but you really shouldn't like Reed as a character or as a person, and I think that's a compelling thing about his character. And John Krasinski, can he pull that off? I don't know. So here are 10 roles I think John Krasinski could play in the MCU. Role number 10. This one I thought of a little while ago. I was like, what if they don't put him on a movie and he's doing something on Disney Plus? And then I figured, well, who's a character he could maybe potentially play? And I went with Trickshot. And if you don't know who Trickshot is, he is Barney Barton, or the brother of Clint Barton, Hawkeye. This could be a role that he could easily be the anti-hero. Maybe he becomes halfway through the season. He has to work with Clint. They go back to the circus. They learn about their past. It's a good way to introduce Clint's past in a way that isn't connected to S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers or to Natasha. And a guy like John could really just bring something to that role that could easily be forgotten because Trickshot's not like a big character, so he's not going to be well liked or well received if an unknown comes in. But if you get somebody like John Krasinski who has a fan base behind him, you could really add another level to that kind of character that I think could be really interesting and something that could benefit the show Hawkeye, because I don't know if Jeremy Renner is enough to keep that show interesting, and that's why I'm excited that Kate Bishop's going to be on it. So at number 9, this is like, I think the weirdest one I put on here. I put Longshot of the X-Men. I think this could be, if you played this up a certain way with another character or another, like a Captain America type character, where Mojo of Mojo World wants to give his world some character to like love and respect, like their Captain America or their Cyclops or one of those kind of characters on Mojo World. That's going to be the actor. I think you could easily have Longshot be portrayed as like this swashbuckling kind of hero who's so forthright and that kind of stuff. And it's an interesting way to add another element to the Longshot character. Plus, John Krasinski could probably have a lot of fun pretending to be like an over-the-top hero, and then off-screen on Mojo World, he's kind of maybe a depressed guy who doesn't want to be part of Mojo World. He wants to go on his own, and that's how you lead him into the X-Men. I think that could be something really interesting and something that not a lot of people would expect. I think that would be a really compelling place to put him. You could have him maybe direct an X-Men movie that involves this storyline. It could just be some place not a lot of people were expecting the franchise to go, and I wouldn't hate to see it. I think it could be something that's really interesting and unique for the Longshot character. That's why I have him as number 9. And at number 8, I have Eric O'Grady. I know there's been a lot of talk about Eric O'Grady showing up in one of the Ant-Man movies, and for a long time I heard some speculation that it might be Joel McHale, which I'm like, it makes sense, he's a douchebag. But if you want to do something as an actor that you haven't really done before, come on, like, Eric O'Grady is a huge tool. He's a huge piece of shit. It could be a great way to show some acting chops for a guy like John Krasinski, where instead of playing the lovable dork that everyone likes, he's a womanizing asshole that he is just so different from any other character he played. I could see that being a compelling way for a character and an actor like this to want to take up a role he's never done before. How could one of the most respected and liked actors of a sitcom become one of the biggest womanizing dicks of the MCU? That could be a really cool challenge for him. He could maybe bring another just level of interest to a character like Eric O'Grady, and I think it could be a really interesting thing that we could potentially see in an Ant-Man 3 or another movie. I think it's just an interesting one I don't think a lot of people would have considered. And it could be fun to see, and if it's not, then it's not, you know? That's just what it is, so that's my number 8. And at number 7, I have Rick Jones. I think they'll go younger for Rick Jones, but I wanted to throw this one in here because they've been rumoring and talking about putting Rick Jones in a movie for so long. If it's a guy like John Krasinski, you could have him like he's been around in all the other movies, and he's just been kind of like a big fan of this stuff, and now he's kind of coming into his own, and they're going to give something to do. Maybe he becomes the A-Bomb. Maybe he becomes the weird Rick Jones thing that's happening in the Al Ewing Immortal Hulk book. I just threw him on there because what the hell. And at number 6, I have the Grim Reaper. Yeah, this is another fun one I think that could be really interesting for a guy like John Krasinski to sink his teeth into. It's a dark, scary kind of guy. He's obviously has a history related to the Masters of Evil, to the Avengers, but it could just be an interesting role, and you could bring some complexity to him. Maybe he's trying to work off debts to help his brother be integrated back into society, find a way to cure his brother of his ion disease, and you could also throw in, Wonder Man in that storyline. It could add, again, some depth to a character that doesn't really have a lot of depth to him. He could have a really cool costume. It's just something not a lot of people would expect from John, and I think at this point, everyone's expecting him to be Reed Richards. So if he doesn't show up as Reed Richards, there's going to be some letdown to a degree. But if we are just watching, say, Ant-Man 3 or a West Coast Avengers movie, and this guy just shows up, he looks like the Grim Reaper, his scythe comes out, and it's John Krasinski underneath the mask, I think a lot of people would see that as a really cool idea. It'd be something that nobody was expecting. I went with no one would expect this to happen with this guy, so that's why I'm throwing it in here. And at number 5, I have Kang the Conqueror. I'm almost positive it's going to be Richard E. Grant in the Loki movie, but I wanted to put this one in here because I think it'd be really cool. John Krasinski is so well liked in the community as an actor, as a director, as a person. He's so well liked. How do you make him a time-traveling lunatic that has more brains than any of the Avengers, and how would you portray that in a way that a lot of people could gravitate to and understand and like? I think you could do something cool there. I really like Kang the Conqueror, and like I said, this is not something a lot of people would expect, and I don't know, it could just be really interesting and unique. I'm just saying, guys, Kang the Conqueror, John Krasinski, nobody would expect it. And at number 4, we get into the top 4 that I think are very likely if he's not Reed Richards. At number 4, I have Moon Knight. You look at some artist interpretations of Moon Knight, he looks very close to a John Krasinski type. It is a role that an actor would love to do, especially if he did some stylized and genre stuff in A Quiet Place. I could see him wanting to do a role like this, maybe where he has a persona that's really lovable and fun and goes into something a little more dark and some other personas. It's a role that I don't think a lot of people would give him credit for doing, but it's an interesting choice. I know I've done a video where I'm talking about Oliver Jackson Cohen as Moon Knight, but if it's John Krasinski, who's going to complain? That is a way you get a lot of more fans to be interested in Moon Knight and go back and read the source material, and it could just be a really interesting thing to do to that character. I could definitely see Moon Knight being a role an actor would want to go to, not just like, you don't get your lazy type who wants to just make money into the role of Moon Knight. If you want to make it something that's prosperous and interesting, you get somebody who is an actor who wants to do a dramatic role like that. And I think it could be a unique experience not a lot of people would see coming. And at number 3, I have Silver Surfer. I think this one's a little funny. It could be kind of cool to see. He'd have to, shave the beard off, but I think it'd still work. He's just got the build for that kind of guy, right? I always thought he just has the build for that kind of guy. And I think it'd be interesting to see. He could definitely hold his own in a movie, so it would just be kind of interesting to see what they do with Silver Surfer. And I think John Krasinski's not a bad choice. And at number 2, I have Slim himself. I have Cyclops. I mean, this one is just so obvious to me. He's got the build, he's got the Captain America-like stature and attitude. He seems like he could hold his own in a genre piece, and it's just, he can easily lead a team like that. Because Scott Summers and Reed Richards have a few similarities in terms of their leading style, I will say that. And I think with a character like Scott Summers, you're able to go a little more into like the dark side of a few things instead of being the sciencey, nerdy guy. You could have a lot more fun, I believe, as a Scott Summers type than as a Reed Richards. And he's got the look. He looked great in that suit. He could definitely hold his own. You could get Emily Blunt as Jean Grey or Emma Frost. I don't think anybody would complain there. And it's not one I don't think anyone's thinking about, because I don't want them to cast younger for the X-Men. I want them to cast older. That's what we saw with Ty Sheridan. So he looks like Cyclops, right? I'm not the only one who doesn't he looks like Cyclops. I really do think he does, and it could be a really interesting performance for him to do. And I would just love to see it, guys. Like, really think it's gonna come. I do. And my number 1 pick for John Krasinski is Richard Rider, Nova. This seems right up his alley. He could easily fit into that world that James Gunn and Taika Waititi kind of built in the MCU. He's a known character. He could definitely pull off the helmet. You'd recognize him even while he's wearing the helmet. And he could definitely hold his own. He'd be a great foil to Peter Quill. And this is the way those two could play off each other with Gamora. I think that could be really interesting. And it's such a different character than what we've seen from the MCU that it could be appealing too. Because whatever you think, Reed Richards is just going to be a Stephen Strange, a Tony Stark type. There's not going to be anything really interesting about him. And yeah, that's my list. So if you guys liked it or you didn't, let me know in the comments below how you felt. And as always, you can check me out on Patreon, on Twitter, on Instagram. All the information will be in the description below. Thank you guys so much for listening. And what do you guys think? Do you want to see John Krasinski as Reed Richards? Would you like to see him in another role like I would? Or what do you guys think? Do you even want him in the MCU? I mean, who wouldn't? I'd still think Richard Rider's the best role for him. But we'll see what happens, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Later.